Good morning. My name is Jeff Pollock. I'm the current chapter president. Appreciate y'all joining us this morning. I was a few minutes late. I was at Taco Mac last night. We had 42 students in the CI 103 class, which is great. That's two more than we were counting on. We had 2 walk-ins, and it was a great group. We had people from Atlanta, the state, about 15 people from out of state, and then I sort of stopped asking after that, and then a couple guys raised their hands like, hey, what about us? And we had 2 folks from Mexico, which I thought was pretty cool. So a good sign for the organization and great for Atlanta. We host those classes, which benefit us. So real quick, a few announcements for the chapter, but before I do that, I want to thank our 2013 chapter sponsors, Marcus and Millichap, Ackerman and Company, Adams Realtors, the Simpson Company, Wells Fargo, Standard Landscape, Brand Properties, Bank of North Georgia, Excelligent, Anderson Tate and Carr, First Colony Financial Corp., and Strategic Exchange Advisors. We hope that y'all will consider these folks in your practice. They allow us to have these great breakfasts at no cost and a bunch of other programming, so please keep them in mind. A few announcements about the chapter. Tomorrow you're going to get an email with the new slate of officers for next year, so you're almost done dealing with me, which is great. It's been a good experience, but I'm sure you'll be happy to have some fresh faces. So please respond to that. There's 3 officers that will need to be voted in by the chapter. Also, we sent a survey out a few weeks ago asking for participation on committees. We're still looking for folks for next year, so please feel free to email Katie or myself or see me after, and I'll be glad to get you more information on that. We'll have a social event on October 22nd at First Citizens Bank, and then our next chapter meeting will be on the 24th of October. And October 21st, that weekend, it actually starts on a Wednesday, there's a national conference in Denver. There will be about 9 folks from Georgia sitting for the exam, and then there will be the national program, and there will be networking events and all kinds of great programming. So if you want to get involved on the national level, encourage y'all to check that out. At least 3 or 4 of us will be going from the chapter. So we'll give you a report when we get back. And there's an exam on the 24th. And then finally, on November 13th, we'll have our annual economic forecast. It's a great event every year. We have Dr. Chandon coming from University of Pennsylvania. So we look forward to that. Hope you can join us. That'll be at Cherokee Town Club this year. We're moving it from Villa Cristina, which has been our event venue in the past. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ann Von Martin, our programs chair. Thank you to her and Michael Reeves for putting this together, and look forward to learning from the pros.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning. I was hoping this year I would be lucky enough to find another magazine with a quirky title saying how social media is so sexy, but I wasn't lucky this year. So when I came home last night from Taco Mac, I was thinking, man, you know, I really suck up there on stage, so let me watch some stand-up comedy. So I started doing that, and before I got started in practicing how to do Jim Carrey's impersonation of a mad, it was a Sam Bernard, an angry Sam Bernard. I remember, oh yeah, that's right, we have Michael Bull. Michael Bull is quite a comedian, and he sure knows how to entertain people. So I'm sure that he's going to make it easy for me by doing a good job in entertaining you and making you laugh. He, as many of you know, is the managing broker of Bull Realty and, of course, the host of the Commercial Real Estate Show, which is great to listen to. I learned a lot from him just by by listening to it. And then we have Les Adkins. He's the founder and CEO of Orange SMS Consulting. And I want to go ahead and turn it all over to them. I want to share our quick fun facts, which is Michael Bull. He and I have something in common, which is we're both adrenaline junkies who love speed, and he's got an Illuminator, Cameron, Daytona, 30-foot long, like a offshore race boat, at top speeds at 125. Yes, fun. And then we have another adrenaline junkie. He actually is more on the physical side. He likes to do things like Tough Mudder. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but if you know what Warrior Dash is, let's just say that's like that, but on steroids. So let me go ahead and turn it over to them, and so they can get started.
Yeah, I have a tough guy here for me. Well, thanks for having us today. We appreciate it. And to let you know what we plan to do is we plan to give you an overview of a great strategy for social media. One of the things I think a lot of us have done, including me, is you kind of get out there and start doing things. You don't get a return. And Les is great. I've had a lot of social media people that I've interviewed on my show. And Les gives you a great perspective to start with, to see really what you should be doing and what you should not be doing. So we're going to cover some concepts of a strategy, and then I'll tell you what we've done, mistakes that we've made, and the things that we've done. We'll also open up to questions at the end. In the social media way, if you have a question that you'd like to tweet, just put that question in a tweet and put hashtag Georgia spelled out CCIM. We'll see it on the Twitter, and we may answer it that way. Also, if you have a question that we don't get to, you're welcome to contact Les or myself afterward if you like. So I'd like to get started, Les, with just that. What are some preliminary considerations for someone that's getting started, or maybe they're starting over with a social media strategy? They really need a strategy. Can't they just get out there and start tweeting?
Some people think that they can get out there and start tweeting, but interestingly enough, just the other day I had a guy a business partner of mine. He said, Les, he said, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I think people are getting really tired of just all this social media, and things of that nature. But so the big thing is to understand that to start off with a strategy, the number one thing you need to know is who is your audience. And people forget that. They forget about the fact that they do just start tweeting, or they start, Facebooking or LinkedIn or one of the other ones, pinning, whatever it is. And they forget that there is a strategy involved. Most people start a strategy with your business, but they forget to start a strategy. They understand the audience of who they're going after for their business, but then they forget that the audience, that you need to define that audience to understand who they're going to go after for their social media. So how do you guys currently, working and understanding with your audience? I know that you guys changed some things from a Twitter account and things of those natures.
Yeah, we're always changing to try to get it right. I think one of the things I see in commercial real estate is that you say, oh, well, I'm in commercial real estate, so I'm going to tweet things about commercial real estate, and I think that's a mistake. I think you want to look at who your audience is. So if you're a tenant rep, for example, and you're helping companies lease office space, they don't want to hear about commercial real estate. They want to hear about things that are interesting for them to run a company. And so you want to think about what's interesting to them. If you're just tweeting commercial real estate all the time, they might not like to hear that. The same thing is geographically. If your business is all in Atlanta, for example, then you may want to concentrate more on Atlanta-centric news and things that would be interesting to your clients who are in Atlanta. So I think that's another thing to consider.
Yeah, one of the big things is people have a tendency to think of social media as just another media outlet to sell your product or sell your services. And one of the big things is you have to build trust. It's a completely different animal. You can't just start saying, hey, come buy from me, my services, because we're the greatest in the world. You actually have to build trust. And there was actually a slide, I don't know if we have it up here, but there was a slide in Oracle World that just happened that talked about how the world is changing from, how marketing people are changing from understanding an audience in general to looking at audience-specific needs. So meaning that you, just what Michaell said, you have to understand, give information out about that's going to, that we say, add value to humankind or add value to your audience. And if you're not adding value and you're just selling, or if you're still just promoting your services, then that's not a place to do that unless you've built that trust up first. Because if you don't have the trust in social media, they'll drop you and just or go on to another person who's actually building trust. That's why a lot of companies right now are taking market share over companies that have been around for 100 years, because the 100-year companies are like, but we're the best. We'll just tell them that we're the best and they'll come buy from us. And that's not how social media and the new consumer and the new audience works. They need to feel like they trust you and that you're adding information that benefits them before they'll buy your services.
Right. And our audience is interesting because we have the radio show, which is national. So we want to attract commercial real estate people who are interested in commercial real estate subjects all over the country. But then in Atlanta, I want to attract brokers and I want to attract clients. So we have a pretty varied audience at our firm. So it's a little more difficult. I think when you specialize in commercial real estate, like some of our brokers do and most of you do, it's a little easier for you to think about what you should be saying, and what the people want to hear. Then also, Les, you got to think about where your customers are, right?
Yeah, I mean, and when you say where they are, meaning that, where are they in the process? Where are they geographically?
Where are they on systems? What are they using?
Yeah, what are they using? So, yeah, I mean, here's the biggest thing. So, if you get all excited about Facebook and you start spending all your time on Facebook, but your audience isn't there, then it's a waste of time. So one of the dirty little secrets of Facebook is that there are droves of people leaving Facebook. There was an article not too long ago that Google came out and said, "Is Facebook dead?" I don't think Facebook's dead, but Facebook has stalled. Now, from a business perspective, and it goes back to what you're trying to do, being where your audience is. And there's some research that needs to be done by your organizations to find out who your audience is, number one. I speak to tons of businesses, and it's amazing to me how they can tell me exactly what their services are, what they're providing, and then I ask, well, who's your audience? And even companies that have been around for a while, they'll say, well, everybody's our audience. And that's an old adage of, no, I'm sorry, everyone is not your audience. You might like to sell to everybody, but everyone's not your audience. And if you go under the guise that everyone's your audience, then you're not going to put out information that's going to add value to those specific people. It's just going to be general blah, 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 is exactly what they're going to hear.
Yeah, so you want to think about, are your clients on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, or where are they, and how can you reach them? For example, I was on Facebook early on, and personally, and then all I had was connection was like girls from my high school and college. I mean, and they're like winking and all this. I'm like, and you know how old these girls are? They're my age, and I'm like, wait a minute. So I got off of it. And then we got back on it as a company, and I spoke at the ICSC commercial board a few weeks ago, and our Facebook lit up, had a lot of activity. So, you think about it, I think Facebook has gotten older.
Yeah, it's an older crowd. So the growth in Facebook is 65 plus still, which is amazing. But the interesting thing is, it's knowing who your audience is, where your audience is, and what you're trying to do for your audience. Meaning, if you know your the age group of your audience, that'll kind of tell you what social media platforms to be putting out your message. If it's an older audience that you're looking for, they're there on Facebook or LinkedIn and things of that nature. But again, it's not about just putting out that my company's the best or we provide these services. It's more about understanding what value you give to that person or to that individual. And we've changed from speaking to the masses to truly, when you're speaking to your audience, you need to pretend that that person is sitting across the room from you. It's no longer, the big thing's the 30-second elevator pitch. It's more about, if you were talking to your mom, your dad, your son, a family member, a best friend, and they asked you, what would you do? What do? You wouldn't say, oh, I'm glad you asked. Well, we actually represent, the majority of international business around the world, and we actually help them to increase their bottom line. That's a 30-second pitch. If you told your friend that, they'd look at you and go, what? And so you really have to it's about talking to the people like you'd talk to your friend. And that's a big hurdle for some reason for a lot of businesses, is why can't they can't transfer that, well, I'm not talking to my friend, I want them to buy business from me. And the world's changed from how you do that.
Les, tell us the difference between a social media strategy and a campaign.
Okay, so social media strategy is long term. One of the things is that if you're in social media, you begin to do social media, you're in it for the long haul, meaning that you can't start and stop and start and stop and start and stop. Because what happens is you build your trust, and if you stop, you go away, and they go, well, what happened to him? And I even though I am in social media, sometimes I'm not as regular writing my blog as I should be, and I hear about it from the people. They go, where have you been? Why'd you leave? So if you're in business, you really have to understand that once you start social media, this is in it for the long haul. It's kind of like the same thing. And I was trying to think yesterday to use an example. If you think about from a social media strategy point of view, 13 years ago, how many of you had cell phones? So I was in advertising radio, and so I had one of those gigantic big box cell phone, the bag phones, but not a whole lot of people had cell phones. Now, if I'm without my cell phone, or if we can't imagine how we lived without cell phones. It's the same thing with social media. People are looking at it sometimes from a business perspective saying, do I really need to be on there at least 3 times a week, or however often your strategy says and your audience wants? And then they go, well, I don't really need to. And then what happens is it hurts you. So that's a social media strategy. A social media campaign is something that you're trying to focus on for a short period of time. So the two are completely separate, meaning that if you're going to do a social media campaign, it has a start time and an end time. But you've got to also be talking about that campaign along with your strategy. It has to work within your strategy. And the strategy has to understand who your audience is, what you want them to do, what value are you giving to them. And one of the biggest things, the difference between a campaign and a social media strategy, a campaign has a specific goal. A strategy, you're trying to build trust. So meaning you might give them information about the commercial real estate laws in the state of Georgia. But here's the big deal on a social media strategy. At the end, you don't say, for more information, please contact our office. You just give it to them because you give it to them like you give it to your friend. You wouldn't say, okay, I'm going to give you this, but before I give you this, you have to promise you're going to call my office and do business with me. And I think sometimes we forget that that's how the rest of the world works, especially in the social media world. So strategy is long-term. Campaigns are short-term, but the campaigns have to fit within your strategy. They can't be complete. So you can't have a strategy of building trust, then all of a sudden say, from a campaign perspective, buy now. So
Yeah, I think advertising has gone from push marketing to attraction marketing, and I think that's why commercial real estate, we've been a little behind the 8 ball in social media because we typically don't want to give away information. And it's been difficult for us to move over my career and say, all right, now I got to give away information. I mean, a lot of you, we are connected in social media, and you know that we're providing incredible information, sometimes right to our competitors. Well, you know what? There's plenty of business. You are going to attract a certain amount of business and referrals and things from that. So you got to be able to give away that information, unless you talked about everyone has a cell phone now. How important is a mobile strategy in social media and business?
It's very important. I mean, mobile, there are statistics that just came out, and I'm working with a couple of social media, actually mobile companies, but there is a that came out that in Asia right now, more people get their internet through their cell phone than laptop or desktop. At the end of this year, it's been projected, and I haven't read the latest projection. It was 2014. At one point, it was 2015. Then it moved down to 2014. Now it's saying by the end of this year, in the U.S., more people will gain their information from a mobile device, either this device or a pad, and not their laptop or desktop. So what does that mean? So what that means is that I need to silence my phone, is what that means. What that means is that if your business doesn't exist here, meaning if I can't find you on my mobile device, and if I do find you, it's all wacky because your website or something is not, showing correctly because it's not mobilely enhanced, I will not go back to you. Meaning that you get one shot in today's world, especially within social media and mobile. And if I'm looking for a business, commercial real estate or any type of business, and you don't exist on a mobile platform, I'm not going to come back and find you. So the biggest thing there is you have to be mobile to get the new business. So Michael and I have a joke that it's not a joke. I've told everybody, if you don't want to do any of this stuff, that's fine. If you want to get out in the next 4 years, it keeps going back. Yeah, if you want to get out in the next 3 to 4 years and cash out and retire, great. If you want to do business past 2015, you got to have a mobile presence.
I think that's important. I think it's interesting, too. Have you guys noticed this, that a lot of our clients now are in their 20s and 30s? And they're younger, aren't they? A lot of the clients that we're dealing with. And so, they're involved in mobile. And one of the things that I think a lot of us say that I've heard even this morning, and what do you say to this, Les, when someone says, I do not have time for social media?
And I hear that all the time. So let's look at another technology. How many of you in the room, by a show of hands, use email? Raise your hand. How many of you can imagine not using email? So no one raised their hand. How long has email been around? Email's only been around for the last, say, maybe 15 years? Or maybe even less than that. I remember I did Lotus Notes. I actually had a boss one time said, well, we did it with pen and paper, just the computers went down, give them pen and paper. You know, you can't imagine running your business without email. You need to start understanding that people always didn't have email to run their business. But now, none of you raised your hand that said that you could go without it. Social media is the exact same way. It's something that is a learning curve, but it's going to be part of everyday business. And like he said, your clients are 20 to 30 years old. They use social media. Again, if you're not using the technology that they're using, they're not going to do business with you, period. And that's that's just a fact. It's not a scare tactic. It's not a people need to run and do this. It's just a fact that, if you can't imagine doing business with email, less than a year or 2 years from now, most people can't imagine doing business without social media. And it is going to change. And I know you had another question, so I'll wait to answer that thing. So.
Okay. My goal is to not have to check my email. That's where I want to be one day. Okay. Well,
Just get Siri. Siri can do it for you.
Yeah. Well, what are some tips for time management for busy professionals to use social media?
So here's the rule of thumb. I was talking to another buddy of mine the other day, and it's going to be interesting, and I know this kind of goes into one of the questions we're going to ask you a little bit later, but I'll do it now because I think it's appropriate, is social media is going to change. There are a zillion companies right now out there that provide outsource. You can have them do all your social media. They can send campaigns, they can do tweets, they can post things for you, but it's going to become an admin type position where it's going to be within your organization. So to get back to your original question, how can someone who's a busy executive, and I travel all the time, so trust me, I understand busy. I just got back from training. This is my first full week, and I'm in town all month of October, but I travel about every other week. And then starting in the next month, I don't even remember. I'm like in town 1 week every month. But if you actually just look at your social media, 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at lunchtime, and 15 minutes before you end the day, you'll have enough bandwidth to respond and do the things you need to do to make social media work for you. It used to be 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening. Now it's 15 minutes. If you can do 15 minutes 3 times a day, and guess what? You get to pick what times a day you do this 15 minutes. But it's 15 minutes 3 times a day. If you can just commit to that, you can get a pretty good start on creating a social media strategy.
And that's what I do. I mean, I'm not sitting on social media all day. I'm doing it as I have time. Maybe I'm sitting, and I know I shouldn't do this, but sometimes I'll sit at a red light. You're sitting there for 3 minutes, all right? And I'm doing something like that. Just try to quit doing it before I take off, right? But also there's tools, there's free tools, like Hootsuite, right?
Yeah, there's Hootsuite, and there's some other ones as well. I mean, it depends on, if you have the money to invest in it, there's some great companies, organizations like Hootsuite, like even Vocus. I'm a big fan of Vocus. They actually used to, if you don't know who Vocus is, they used to be the PR people that would read all the newspapers and get the key articles that you were interested in. Now they've incorporated social media as well. And
how do you spell that?
VOCUS. VOCUS. I almost went to work for them about 3 years, but they're a really good company. I don't get paid for promoting them, by the way. They are just a really good organization from the information that they put together. Hootsuite's out there. Even some of the platforms are now getting better about letting you set up some things that searches and things of that nature that make it easier for you to find stuff.
And as you know from Hootsuite, you can set that social media to go out when you want it to go out in advance.
Yeah,
So-
and there's also Sprout Social, and there's several. If you actually just Googled platforms that help you set up things in advance and things of that nature, you'll get quite a bit of information. But Hootsuite, Sprout Social, Vocus, and they range from free to a monthly fee.
Okay, let's talk about in-house and out-house. We all like indoor plumbing, right?
Yeah.
And you touched on it. What we do is we do most all of it in-house. What we've done is integrate most of our company. It's hard to get brokers to do it who are out there commission only and running out after deals, but some of them are helping out. But we have everyone on our staff. So, we have different people on our staff on different systems who are responsible for upgrading that and making that more powerful, providing more information for our connections out there. So, I think the more you can get everyone involved who has an interest, and you may have a lot of younger employees who know how to do this, and they're interested in it. And guess what? They're on social media anyway. And even if think you're watching them on your computers, I know for corporate policies, we have systems that know what our computers are doing, but they'll do it on their pad or their phone anyway. So I think incorporating your staff and your people is a good way to do that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, one of the biggest things that we see is, people are trying to, there are people making money hand over fist by saying, well, we'll do it all for you. So let me ask you another question. I'm big on asking questions. PR and marketing, most of us outsource that, right? Would you agree? Just shake your head. And then, so what happens when your budgets get tight? What's the first thing to leave? PR and marketing, right? So if you're outsourcing social media, guess what happens? When your budget gets tight, that's going to be in that little, you're going to get rid of PR, marketing, and social media because it's all outsourced. So it's important that's why when I was talking to the guy the other day, he's like, I was talking to some people and they said it's basically in the next 5 years it's going to become an admin position. And I agree with that. To have in-house, you're going to need a strategy. And a lot of these admins and interns and things of that nature, they're on social media, but they don't know how to put together a strategy, but they can sure as heck implement any strategy or anything that you want them to do on social media. The nice thing about using a 20-year-old or even a college intern is they already have this knowledge. They grew up with this knowledge. I mean, put a phone in the hand of a 5-year-old, and they'll figure out things about that phone that you never even knew it could do, including they'll look at you and say, the first thing they'll ask you, is there a code? And it's amazing if you hand a phone to a 5-year-old how much they'll be able to do. And why do you think all the schools are moving to iPads and things of that nature? Because they grew up with this technology. And so to integrate them into your organization, two things happen. Number one, you help out the workforce, and you actually start programs that can actually allow them to get into the career workforce. Number two, it helps you out because it's an inside source. You don't usually have to pay them as much as you do an outsourced company. And when budgets get tight, they can still be there for you.
I hired a videographer for my show, and he was 24 when I hired him, and I asked him, I said, do you understand social media? Are you familiar with it? He looked right at me and said, Michael, I'm 24. So that's how he answered it. So I knew he was good to hire. Well, we also talked about sharing some things that you shouldn't do, and on social media, what are some things we should not do? So
there's, this is a business crowd. So one of the things that you should not do, there's a rule of thumb, which is, and I'm going to explain this, but let me start by saying there's a rule of thumb. Don't put anything on social media, so that you wouldn't want your parents or family to see. You think that may be funny, and you might think that you'd never do that, but our generation, and yes, I am part of the older generation. I just turned 50, so I can safely say that now. But one of the things is that we grew up in a society where I'm this way at work, and no one knows my personal life. This is exactly the way I am at work, and I'm going to be very conservative, and I'm going to dress like this. But then when I'm on my social life, I'm relaxed, I have a beer, I have whatever, and I'm riding down my boat at 125 miles an hour, or something of that nature. The generation the new generation, there is no separation. And guess what? No one in this room probably, and if you are, I apologize, is probably seeing a psychiatrist because you have a dual personality or a split personality. We don't have split personalities. We're the same person we always have been. Now we have a generation that's saying, you know what? Hire me for who I am, because that's who I am. So, from perspective on what not to do, don't try to be one way in business. So you have all your business platforms where you're presenting this particular image, and then you have your Facebook account where you can pretty much do anything you want. You're one person. Your strategy has to include not only your personal stuff, but your business stuff. They're no longer separated. Guess what? I want to know, and I get this answer, well, why do I care about somebody walking my dog? Because it makes you human. I want to know, because I own a dog. So guess what? If you own a dog, and I read on Facebook that you actually own a dog and walk a dog, or run a Tough Mudder, or do something that I enjoy, then guess what? I'm more likely to do business with you, because we have similar interests. So don't be afraid of putting out your personal life and putting also from your business perspective. But what not to do is think that you have, this is my personal life, so I'm going to just keep this separate, and this is my business life, and I'm going to keep that separate. So there used to be a saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Now the saying goes like this: what happens in Vegas ends up on Twitter.
And you don't want to flog your listings, right? You want to have out there, oh, I've got this for sale, that for sale, because if somebody's looking for something for sale, they're going to find that another way, right? You don't want to use social media for that.
Right, exactly. And one of the things, so I'm going to use you as an example, is when I first met Michaell, he had, and I think you've reduced a lot of them, a bunch of Twitter accounts to try to reach different audiences. Mm-hmm. And I think you still have some few, but I think you've cut down on it. The biggest thing is, you're one entity, so you don't have to have a ton of different entities to reach an audience. Just understand that the audience you want to reach, and then try to go out there and reach that from your entity. One of the big myths, and there's actually, and I just heard it the other day, I thought it had gone away, but it didn't, is, well, I'm going to create a profile that's going to actually fit this specific audience that I'm going after. And there's a couple of people in Atlanta, and I don't remember their names, I wouldn't mention them anyway, that are promoting the idea of creating false profiles. Guess what's happening? LinkedIn, Facebook, and those types of things, they're going in, and if you've created a false profile to try to reach a certain audience, they're stopping and taking those accounts off. The one thing about social media is transparency, transparency, transparency. Tell the truth. Don't lie. Be completely transparent. Don't try to trick. Don't try to pretend. Just be truthful. So one of the things not to do is to try to do something that's going to get an audience that may not be your audience. If you want them as your audience, then develop your organization so that your audience, that they can come to you because that's what they'll do business with you. Don't try to pretend you're something you're not in order to attract that audience.
And you talked about building trust and building relationships with social media. Another thing that we've learned and seen over the years is also to give credit. So if we're following La Vista or one of our friends in the industry and they tweet something good and there's a link, we don't go to that link and then tweet it like we found it. We repost it and give them credit and give them a mention. You start building relationships and credibility, and people see that and they appreciate that. So,
yeah, I've got a great example. So I listen to podcasts, and I don't remember her name, Jennifer something or another. But she, I tweeted a quote from her podcast, and she's pretty well known in the social media world and big innovation world, and she's out of New York. And just because I tweeted that and gave her credit from that podcast, she's now following me on Twitter. That's the types of things that you gain by being, giving credit. So one of the big things is, the old plagiarism and all that thing. In social media, you want to give credit all the time. You're looking for content. There's only so much content in everyone's brain. So the nice thing about is that with the social media world and with the internet world, you have tons of content at your fingertips. Just make sure that you give credit to it. And credit is just literally stating their name, maybe linking, making it shorter, but linking back to the original article. You don't have to do a whole lot. I mean, I learned AP writing, so you don't have to do like research and have a bibliography of all the credits in the end. Just a really quick blurb on social media, I'm giving credit.
Okay, we're going to touch just real briefly on some of the systems and some of the new things there. So if you have any questions so far or along the way, go ahead and raise your hand or tweet it to us, right? So Google Plus, what do you think? How important is Google Plus to business users like us?
I think it's vital. And here's the reason why I say that. And I'm a big fan of Google. Google Plus is one of those unknown, for a lot of people, for a lot of business people, entities that are like, well, what's Google Plus? The biggest value of Google Plus is that you can connect to people without them saying, okay, it's okay to connect me. Meaning that, so I'm connected to people like Mark Cuban, Richard Branson, and I'm connected to Richard Branson some other places, but that I can now have access into those worlds from a perspective of Google Plus. I can see what they're doing, I can see the innovation they're doing, I can see what type of business they're doing, who they're doing business with. And also, with Google Plus, they have these communities. So one of the big things that allows you from a perspective of business is you want to actually get into communities, build trust in those communities so that they do business with you. And I'm sure that I haven't researched it, but I'm sure there are a ton of commercial real estate communities within Google Plus, and then you can find content from there as well, things that you may not have known. So it's a matter of Google Plus, I think, is going to last more so than what they've done in the past. I think Google Plus will last.
And I'll say one word about Google Plus. It's Google Juice. It will give you Google Juice. That's the one reason I would be involved in it if I were you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the Google Juice is, so like if Google, they eat after their own business, or however that saying goes, meaning that if you're not on Google Plus, then you'll notice that your search engine isn't as high up. And they keep changing those algorithms. So just an FYI warning. Can I give a warning? Absolutely. FYI warning. Please don't pay anybody any money to make sure that you're the top 10 Google search. Please don't do that. If you're doing it, you're wasting money. If you Google my name, my business, or my Twitter account, I'm in the top 10. I've never paid a dime to anyone. All I do is I have a presence online. And they keep changing their algorithm because what those companies that say they'll make you in the top 10, and there are some companies that can do that for you, but you can also do it without paying that money, is they're actually going in and they're changing it to try to put those companies out of business. The tricks of the trade that were used to actually get you on a Google search, Google, other search engines are going in and they keep changing the algorithm so companies like that can't make money off of trying to get you on the top 10.
It can work against you.
Yes, it can work against you.
I think talking about SEO, I think one of the things that we used to be able to do is create a great website and then leave it there and have good SEO, and you can't do that anymore. Your website has to move. It has to have blogs. It has to change, and that's a big thing that Google's looking at. We're getting short on time here. We're all on LinkedIn. I mean, it's probably the business social media. Any quick tips or anything about that that's new that we might want to think about?
Actually, kind of look at LinkedIn and focusing more on true connections. One of the things that LinkedIn is kind of there's a lot of business people. LinkedIn is one of the top business platforms. I love LinkedIn. I'm a fan of LinkedIn. But also, like the endorsements, there are a lot of people getting sick of those endorsements. So if you want to endorse people, endorse them because you truly want to endorse them. Don't endorse them thinking that you're going to get endorsed back by them. I get a ton of endorsements. Every day my email's full of so-and-so endorsed you. I don't even know these people. I mean, I connect to them, but I don't even know these people. And I know the reason why they're endorsing me because they want me to endorse them back. And so be very particular on LinkedIn in making your connections. And if you really want to endorse somebody, write them a recommendation instead. Those are even more valuable than endorsements. So LinkedIn is growing still. They're trying to all these platforms are trying to figure it out. So LinkedIn, I say, be more specific about who you connect with and what kind of value they can add to your business.
And the groups are powerful on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, the groups are powerful, just like Google Plus. The groups, commercial real estate. The groups are where the true activity happens.
Okay. And how about our old favorite, Facebook? Any tips there?
Facebook, here's the thing. So again, you need to understand who your audience is. And if your audience is 50 plus, then spend some time on Facebook. If you're looking for 20 to 30-year-olds, they have profiles on there, but they're not there. So you want to be on Facebook. It's kind of like the big elephant in the room. If you're not on Facebook, it's like the old internet. If you didn't have a website, you weren't really a business. Well, if you're not on Facebook, you may not exist. I know it's not a true statement, but that's kind of what some people think. But if you're looking for business contacts, understand who your audience is before you actually get really involved and try to spend all your time on Facebook. And I know there's some people out there that are going to say something that are saying differently than what I'm saying, but trust me when I say people are leaving Facebook by the droves. You're seeing tons of articles about, is this the end of Facebook? It's not the end. They're so big that they'll probably be here for 10. If they did nothing else and nobody joined them and nobody added profiles to them starting today, they'd still be around for the next 10 years.
Yeah, and I think my children, I don't know about you guys, but my children are getting off of Facebook and their friends because they say, we're all on there. That we're watching them.
You guys are creepers.
We're creepers, right?
Creepers.
So we know what they're doing now, and they're getting on Twitter. And my son came to me and said his friends are using Twitter because their parents aren't there. And he said, but my dad has over 4,000 followers, so I can't say anything. I'm watching what my son does. And so let's talk about Twitter for business users. What tips would you have for us as commercial real estate professionals?
Learn to say, if you can't say it in 140 characters, it's probably not worth saying. And that's a big, people think about that, but it makes you think. So think about it. If you can't say what you're trying to say in 140 characters, probably shouldn't be saying it from a perspective of a business. Meaning that we live in a world, and it's not our fault, we were brought up this way, headlines, short, quick blurbs, 30-second commercials, 15-second commercials. And so Twitter is a very great way to start building trust. But remember, it's not about promoting your organization in a very upfront, up-face point of view. It's about, say, if you see an article that Michaell has put out regarding commercial real estate, retweet it. Or go to the show, grab the link, and tweet that. It's more about putting out content to build trust. So I would say Twitter's more important about building trust and gaining you that presence than actually going after business. It'll work like that, and every once in a while you want to make sure that if it links to, you do a tweet that links to your website or your blog, but you don't want to do that every time.
And Twitter's my favorite, and I think it's because I'm as busy. We're all busy, right? And you can go to Twitter and do something quick, and you can read it quick. Like in my phone right now, I have a river of information from the people I follow. I get more from Twitter from the people I follow, much more than I get putting out tweets myself, because I'm following people like you and people that are reporting business and news. And so I have that river that I can go in there and search, and if I want, I can go through it very, very quickly. I see something interesting, I can hit that link and read it. So I'll use it also to have fun. I mean, if you've heard, Second Screen, I sent an article this morning, where you can be watching a football game or anything, and you can go on Twitter and see the live comments, uncensored, from both sides, from all over the world. And I have sat there, I thought I was enjoying a game, and I'm enjoying the Twitter comments more than the game.
Yeah. Exactly, and keep in mind, we live in and we're going to talk about this in a minute, but we live in a video world. Vine is a 7-second continuously looping video that's connected to Twitter. And so those are the types of things that you need to do for an organization and to build a presence on Twitter, is to do those things like video Vine, and now there's one called Glide. But do those types of things. Look at what other people are doing on Twitter and emulate that is the best way. If you're not sure how to get involved in what to do on Twitter, follow a couple people, follow myself, follow Michaell, follow other people out there, and then see what they're doing and then emulate that is the best way to learn. There is a learning curve. And all these things are a learning curve. I think Twitter is the hardest learning curve for someone just getting on, if you haven't been on Twitter, because you've got to say it in less than 140 characters. You've got to add links, and they've got to shorten those links. So there's some technology involved. But I think Twitter is the best way to build a presence on your business and to start building trust and loyalty.
Yeah, I think that's a good point of listening and watching. You know, if you're on Twitter, you know Coy Davidson with Colliers out of Houston. I think he's the best at Twitter. And so you kind of look at what he's doing. He understands his audience, and he's doing a good job of getting it. And I've had him on my show, and he's picked up good business from his Twitter presence. So I think Twitter is fantastic. And you mentioned video and YouTube. YouTube is quite an important site now for as a search engine, right?
Yes, YouTube is the second largest search engine now around, meaning that more people are now going to YouTube than they did before. Here's a rule of thumb. If you're 45 and under, chances are you're searching on YouTube first before you search Google. Because the videos that are out there, a ton of how-to videos from moving on. So another thing, if you're not putting videos out, you're missing the boat from a perspective of loyalty and gaining your business. So you need to be putting videos out and having videos in your business. And even audio can go on YouTube.
And let's talk about video in our business, because in commercial real estate, I think we've been hesitant because you don't want to put out something that's unprofessional. You don't want your agents with their phone and putting things out to the world. But I think, you know, with the popularity of reality TV, and that sort of thing, there's a little more acceptance of non-high quality video. I'm not saying put out crap video, but
I mean, I just got an iPhone 5S, and the video quality on this is better than most video cameras.
It's also the man behind it taking
Exactly.
One of the samples you may see up here that we're doing is we have a videographer and pretty fancy equipment, and we're doing professional videos on some of our appropriate listings that have enough shelf life. And one of the things that we're doing is doing a rider, I don't know if you've seen it, on some of those signs. And all we put on that rider is a QR code that if you scan it will take you to the video, and then we put the YouTube logo. So we don't have to say, hey, click here for a video. People visually look at it, YouTube, QR code, okay, I get it, right? Well, think about this. If you're putting that on your signs, what does that say to the public and people that might want to do business with you? If they never scan the QR code, they just look at your rider. What's that say about you, right? That you're in technology, you're into marketing. I think if you look at our business, at least my business, half of it's consulting, it's advisory, and the other half is marketing. So I think when they see that, even if they never scan that and look at your video, they certainly know that you're good at marketing. And so we'd like to open it up to some questions if we have a couple minutes here. Okay. No questions? Yes, sir.
Let's suppose that somebody was just starting a social media campaign for their business. Give me an idea of how long you think it would be before you build up the audience that in turn produce income.
Okay, so if someone's just starting, how long is it going to take it to be worthwhile?
You're not going to like this answer. So actually, depending on how, it depends, everything within technology, it depends. So it depends on how much you're willing to do. If you're willing to really get in there and start posting every single day, before you do that, understand the strategy, understand which platform you're going to use, understand who your audience is, and if you have all that information, what your objective is, what you want them to do, then you choose the technology, and depending on how much work you want to put in it, it'll take 6 weeks to 12, 13 weeks before you'll start seeing some results from it. And here's the thing, remember, it's a social strategy, it's long term, so it's not going to be a quick fix. So, you know, my biggest rule of thumb is if you're not doing it, start now. Because it's going to take a while for you to start building and seeing some results from that.
All right, guys, so I think if you hire less, you can do it in 13 weeks. We've not found that doing it ourselves. It's taken a very long time. You know, I've been studying social media for a long time, reading lots of books, practicing it, interviewing people, and it's taken a while. And when I first started, I told my agents that I was doing it. They all laughed at me. Like, are you kidding? You're going to be wasting your time. But, you know, I like to stay on top of marketing. I knew it was a big marketing thing, so I wanted to learn about it. A couple of final things to tell you as far as where to get more information. I mentioned following some good people and seeing what they're doing is a big way to do it. There's also a book on Twitter that I like called The Twitter Book. And it's great because it gives you, it tells you on one page what you can do, and then it gives you an example, and then it moves on. So it's a quick, easy read. Another book I like is written by Shama Kabani, The Zen of Social Media Marketing. And that's a great book if you're starting a strategy or you've been in it for a while and you're not getting enough return on your investment and you want to look back, all right, well, let's look back at the strategy. Let's understand all the systems to see where I should be.
Yeah, and speaking of books, there's a couple of books that have been out for quite a while, but they're a great place to start. One is Trust Agent by Chris Brogan. I'm a big fan of that. It'll tell you exactly where to start if you're just starting on how to build trust, the psychology of building trust. And the other one is Groundswell, that was put out by Forrester. These are they're older books, but they give you a platform and a basis around a foundation.
Bill?
I understand building the trust, building the awareness. Is there any capability to track your ROI? Michael, you just mentioned it. You know, is there any way to even begin to look at ROI?
Return on investment less, how can you figure it out?
Investment on your time or your money. I mean, I know it's a very difficult and broad question, but
So let me ask you this question. So do you currently do advertising, like for television, radio, magazine, articles? Do you currently do any of that?
very targeted.
Okay, yeah, very targeted. So it's kind of the same way. Just keep in mind on social media, the ROI is a little bit different because you know how do you value somebody's trust? So what you need to look at from an ROI perspective, and this is a quick answer. I can give you much more detail, but the quickest answer is what is a good customer for you, and then how much is that good customer worth to you, and then you can kind of look at the ROI on how many, like if you have 100 followers and you're actually interacting with 10 of those and 2 of those actually do business, then.
One quick thing I can tell you, if you center your social media around your blog and you use your blog as the center and the spokes of the social media, obviously you can watch the counts on your blog and see how many more readers you're getting, and you can see where they're coming from because that blog's on your site and you can find that where those are coming from on your site.
Geographically?
Yes.
Geographically?
Yes, you can geographically as well. Do we have time for one more from Jeff?
Yes, we'll have one more.
Jeff?
Michael, we've had social media panels now. I think it's our third year as a chapter, and other organizations are doing it as well. Why do you think we're such a slow group to adopt as commercial real estate activities?
I think because one is agents in particular are looking. If you look at an agent's job, they're looking out trying to do deals and help their clients, and they just don't see the return on investment. And it's hard to gauge. And then I think the other thing is we're hesitant to give the information out. And you know, I'm connected with a lot of you guys who've known me a long time. And when we first had our website, we have great free information. We included sites to find all available properties, and people looked at me and said, "Michael, why are you giving free information out?" Because you know what, they're going to find it anyway. So why not have them find it from you?
And that's a great statement. One last thing is, you know, you're not the only group that's slow to start on this social media.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Here's the challenge, and here's a true statement. If you haven't started,
Finally?
yeah, it's finally a true statement. Everything I said before that is a total lie. But here's an honest statement. Everything. I'm just getting into myself deeper. The point is that social media is not going away, no matter how many people think it is, want it to, you know, say, oh, it'll never last, but it's here to stay. And so there are people in my industry that feel that if you haven't begun social media, you missed the boat. I don't feel that way. You can start today and still gain a lot with social media. But here's the thing, you gotta start today or in the next week. If you wait till 2015 or 2016 to really get into social media and social strategy, you will spend the rest of your business trying to catch up. So I think there's a limited time to starting, but I think you can start today. I think you've got about maybe a year, but then if you wait any time past that, you'll spend the rest of the time catching up, and they'll find businesses that aren't yours on the places that we've already talked about.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. And that concludes our program this morning. Just let's go ahead and give them a round of applause. Thank you so much, guys, for coming, giving us your secrets on social media. Our next program is going to be October 24th at the same time, same place. You guys have a wonderful morning.